Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Reagan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by all my co-hosts plus an exciting guest. So first, Gary Butterfield, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Reagan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, I'm also joined by all my awesome co-hosts. Laura Nash, how are you doing, Laura?
Excellent.
And Nate Heininger, how are you doing?
So glad to be here. This game, really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. And of course, Shane Kelly, my bro host and real-life twin brother. How are you doing, Shane?
A little physically uncomfortable because of our proximity. You're sitting right next to me sharing a microphone.
Yeah, so this
Darling.
one is going to be a little bit different from normal because I'm visiting Shane in order to see his adorable baby and to attend a wedding. And so here I am in Shane's house. Forgive any slight audio issues that may come up on this episode because Shane and I are jammed very close together and it's kind of weird. Well,
Yeah, if there's anyone out there who's had a hard time telling the difference between the two of you, but could always tell by like your microphone quality who was who, this is going to be a particularly confusing episode for you.
Yeah, you really screwed on this one.
We have a visual set up too, and you look like a conjoined twin that has a very expensive custom shirt.
Yeah, the mic is equally distant between the two of you,
Yep.
so it looks like a very technological Siamese twin apparatus.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
We have news for you all. We've decided to make a change.
We're going to get attached.
I'm sure
Yeah.
wives and baby will love that.
Well, this week we are talking about a game that came out originally last year and that we've been waiting a little while to cover. And what's prompted us to cover it is its sudden Switch release, and that is West of Loathing by Asymmetric. So I've never played the predecessor to this game, Kingdom of Loathing, although I've heard about it from Laura numerous times over the years. But does somebody want to kind of explain what this game is and where it comes from?
Sure. Kingdom of Loathing is a browser-based game, one of those games where you have X amount of actions you can take per day, and then you can't play it anymore, and you have to show up the next day and continue. And it shares a lot of DNA. There's some overlap in things like the humor is definitely a huge part of it, stick figures, black and white. The difference is that Kingdom of Loathing is enormous. I've Ascended, which has kind of beat the game 18 times over the years, and I've been playing since 2009, and they keep releasing more and more content. This is self-contained, it's not enormous, and it's also an RPG with a lot richer animation, music. It's got a lot of the typical game things that you miss in more of an interactive fiction piece like Kingdom of Loathing.
Yeah, I had heard a lot about Kingdom of Loathing, mostly from you, Laura, over the years, and it always sounded kind of cool. I mean, the humor of it definitely comes through, even if you just see screenshots. And so I'd always kind of wanted to check it out, but browser-based sort of perpetual games like that are just not something that I really ever do. Even
they require
ones
a lot of grinding.
Yeah. I think there would have probably been a time many years ago where there would have been extremely my thing, but that was many years ago. I just don't play that kind of thing anymore. So when I heard that those same developers were coming out with this very related game, but that it was going to be this self-contained thing. Originally, it was going to be on PC, Mac, Linux. I think it also came out on iOS, although I haven't tried that version of the game. Did it? Am I wrong about that? I'm seeing some faces.
I don't think so.
I don't think it's out there yet.
Yeah.
I think they've been talking
Yeah, I
about
don't
it.
think
Okay. Well, okay.
You
forget
can take
that.
it back if you...
No, I
dreamed
don't. I don't care. I can be wrong on the internet. No problem. So when I saw that was coming out, I was much more interested in West of Loathing than I ever was in Kingdom of Loathing, just because it's a different format, one that I'm a little bit more sort of game for. But I'm
always down for Westerns.
Yeah, actually, totally, yes. I'm really into Westerns. But I just never got quite the push to play it until this came out on Switch. And so that's sort of why we're covering here a year after its initial release. Gary, I know you've talked about it on a couple of podcasts. I think at least you talked about it on Check It Out, Comrade. So you played this when it first came out, right?
Yeah, pretty much day and date. And just because there's not a great place to put it, I should say. I'm friends with these guys. So just in case anybody is sharpening pitchforks about the kind of journalistic integrity that comes with being friends with people who make stuff.
We find that we take that very seriously on this podcast. So thank you for being upfront and very clear about it.
I didn't even get a free copy of it. So
What?
thanks. Zach. But no, I bought it a day, for the first day because I wanted to support my friends. And I have a very distinct memory of having a kind of a fretful summer because this came out right around the same time Tacoma did. And I was like, I know people and like people who are making games. Like, I hope I like them. Because that's a bad feeling if somebody, makes something that you don't really care for. And I'm not good at lying.
I played in a band for a very long time, and so
Yes.
I know very specifically what you're talking about.
And that is how I learned that skill from playing in a band for a long time myself.
Oh, yeah, no, it was,
Yeah.
you guys, that was great.
Well, that was cool. Like, I like the stuff with the strum.
You played really well.
You look really good up there. Good stage
you were having,
presence.
The worst one is I had a girlfriend in my first band who was like, "You looked like you're having a lot of fun,"
Oh, no.
and said just like
worst
that.
thing someone can say about your play. Everyone up on stage was having a blast. That means the audience did not.
Yeah, it was miserable down here, but you guys seemed like you guys were in like a bouncy house. So I had that kind of nervous feeling, but I wanted to support my friends. I knew I was going to buy it. And I was just really, really happy because I ended up really loving both those games. It's just been very heartening to see the response to this. The fact that I know those dudes has made me my enjoyment of the reception of this, better. For me. Cause, and it wasn't, I have a really hard time lying. Like, I really love it, and it's been fun to be able to, like, when I was playing it, find a joke and take a picture of it with my phone and then like send it to Riff and be like, can I swear on this podcast? I can't remember.
Yeah, please do.
To send him a picture and be like, fuck you, dude. Like, look at this, and have that kind of interaction with him.
Yeah.
It was very, very fun.
Well, and I'm sure that's, and we're going to talk about this a lot, but you're friends with the writer of the game. Is that right? Among others? So
Riff is in my D&D group. Like, Riff is, I hang out with him the most, but I'm very close with him and Zach. I really like Kevin, but I probably know him the least of them. Kevin and Ryan Ike, who is the person who's the composer. I know both those guys. I like them, but I don't know them quite as well as Zach and Riff. Well, the writer and main guy.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, the whole game is really fun, but like the writing, I think, is generally what stands out the most. And so for that to be like the person that you're the most close to of the development team, I'm sure that's a lot of fun.
Like, I am super lucky because once a week we sit down and play tabletop games with that dude. He's very funny.
The pun density must be off the charts.
Yeah, he's he's very good.
I had never even I'd seen Kingdom of Loathing, and when this game came out, all the press, everything was saying it's funny, it's funny, it's funny, it's one of the funniest games of the year. Play it. But I only ever saw like little snapshots, and it mostly was like cow jokes and clown jokes, and like meat is the money, and that didn't seem like that was going to be funny to me. And we talked about doing it for the show, but we didn't until now, and I could not have been more wrong about the comedy of the game. It's just so funny, and I can't wait to talk about it. I know you guys have a bunch of screenshots that I was laughing nonstop playing this game. So if you saw that stuff like me, you might have expected it maybe not to be your type of funny, like almost like a, I don't know, internet-y, forum-y funny, but it's way more dense than that and way more complicated and funny.
So Laura described the game a little bit at the start, but just in case you aren't familiar with the game at all, this is an RPG. It's has a lot of sort of shared DNA with adventure games. I think it plays a little bit, in a lot of ways, more like an adventure game than an RPG. But it's done entirely with stick figure graphics, totally black and white, what look like basically hand-drawn stick figure graphics, a little bit MS Painty looking, I think. Although occasionally there are really detailed stuff in it, but not a lot. And so mostly this game is driven by its text, its humor. And the story of the game is a very conventional Western story until you get even 10 minutes in. You are from Kansas, you're bored, and you've decided to go west and seek your fortune. So you enter the world of the West, and the West is... it's an interesting sort of pastiche of Western stuff with a lot of other weird stuff mixed in. Weird science fiction and absurdism and mysticism and swords and sorcery, all kind of mixed into this Western pastiche that is just really funny. I don't know how else to describe it.
I think it's worth, too, the way you just described that makes it sound like there is a kind of an epic story to it. Like when you say there's mysticism to it, it makes it sound like It is, it takes the structure. So I think adventure games and role-playing games are obviously two touchstones, but then also like Western role-playing games, like a big open world and thing, like this is an open world game.
Yeah.
And it is, it is up to you. The point of the game is to go and explore and do stuff. It's not necessarily to get to the end. And that the mysticism or like those other kinds of like genres that it trucks in, are all unified through that humor lens, so there's no, the story to it of like, I've decided to go, seek my fortune is the story. Like that's the story. Everything that else that happens is stuff that happens along the way that you run into while doing such.
Absolutely. It's really happily loose, not in a sloppy sense, but in the sense that you can be hell-bent on doing a certain quest, and literally the game will kind of be like, oh, we saw something over there. Would you like to go there? You can go. There's no urgency to any of the quests, which is great. There's no timers. So you really can just go where you feel like. If you want to start side questing for an hour and then you want to give up halfway through and do something else, there's no reason you can't just pick up that side quest later.
The minute you start following a quest line in this game because you feel like you need to progress the story, you'll instantly see some new location on your way there that will be 1,000 times more interesting and will tempt you off the path.
Mm-hmm. It's worth, I think, mentioning too, just as part of the design philosophy that I see behind this, is that, that lack of urgency is incredibly important because no open world game has solved that. There's not one open world game that doesn't feel ludicrous when you go off the main path. Like in Fallout 4, you do a DLC to go rescue someone else's kid. Like if you think about, I don't know if you know that game, but it's like, oh, my son's kidnapped. I have to go kidnap my son.
Yeah.
You can literally go do a DLC to go rescue someone else's kid in that game. It's ludicrous, right? Like, you're not going to do that. This is the only open world game I know that fixes that. And I think that a lot of, the kind of philosophy from this, and I usually, when games do this, I don't love it when games kind of like paper over problems with the genre. This game takes almost every problem with the genres it plays with and figures out how to make it more player friendly and not obnoxious. Yeah. And that's big things like that urgency, and it's little things like being able to fast travel from the middle of a dungeon. Because why not? Like,
why not? And that is something that I feel like they knew was such a fix in Kingdom of Loathing, where the only difference between whether you are literally at the bottom of the sea doing something and all the way in the forest is if you take a helmet off and click a different button. Like there's no time penalty for basically teleporting across the map. And I'm sure the game's creators were like, that's something everyone loves about our old game. How can we bring that to an RPG?
In a lot of ways, realism and self-seriousness are these just incredible anchors that weigh game storytelling down. And just by being able to step out of that in this game, they're free to have these kind of more free mechanics that allow you to just sort of do what you wish without like really, if you were in a intense time-based quest to save your child, like, and you had all the, it's like, oh, well, if I can teleport across the map, why don't I just go teleport to save my kid? Right. But in this game, it's because you're free from that. It feels less like it's breaking something to do that.
When you say the premise, like this is a podcast about games that respect your time, like that's what that mechanic is.
Yeah.
Because, putting those restrictions, that's all it costs you. It gives you, realize that you're paying time in exchange for realism. And that is a bad trade, and sometimes like, there are games that do stuff with it, but for the most part, I think that that's something that people assume you have to do it that way. Yeah. And, this game challenges a lot of those assumptions, I think.
Yeah. I think it also, the entire game is like bite-sized experiences. Like everything you do is, I'm going to a new location. I'm probably not going to spend, unless it's like one of the main cities, I'm probably not going to spend more than 10 to 15 minutes, like at the most, at the majority of these locations. But there's like, I don't know how many there are, but it's got to be close to 100. And so allowing things like this, fast travel, whatnot, it doesn't matter because everything is so bite-sized. You can pop in, you can pop out, you can set the speed at which your guy travels. You can set all these different speed things to make it even more your own like speed at which you play the game and your own experience. It makes it a real joy to play and a perfect thing for like the Switch and a perfect thing for our show, where it really is just pick up, play for, however much time you want, and you can put it down. And when you pick it back up, there's nothing that's so serious that it matters if you remembered it or not. And even if there was, you're probably going to figure it out again, or you can
you ask your companion.
Yeah,
like they rounded that up. Like they find every one of those friction points in this genre, and they fix it.
Yeah,
it's
asking
amazing.
Your companion was awesome. You can say, what should I do? And it straight up says main quest. And if you ask them that, it tells you what's the next step on the main quest. Or it'd say, what else should I do? And it says side quest. And I love that. It's so much better than a quest log, which can just be so bulky and hard to manage, especially in a game like this. It's really perfect, and it lets you decide when you're going to do that. You can either ask your companion or not. It's great.
I mean, this is sort of obvious, but we do not cover RPGs on this show almost ever. And the fact that this is an RPG that, I mean, I'm sure different people could spend different amounts of time in this. We usually kind of say how much time it took us to complete the game. I think that the numbers are going to really vary for folks depending on how much they engage with the side quests and how much stuff they discover. But like, in terms of like how many RPGs of any kind could really fit into this sort of show at all, or this took me, I spent probably around 10 hours with the game, which felt like about the right amount of time for me, but I know I probably could have spent a little more, or I could have completed this whole game, or at least the main quest, in like 3 if I'd really worked at it.
I mean, the Kingdom of Loathing, there's a concept called Ascensions, which is you finish all of the main quests and you ascend and restart the game. And there are some people who speedrun and try to do it as many, as few days, as few turns as possible. So it's just made like, how fast can you re-loop and restart the game? This game kind of got rid of that because you basically unlock more maps. Like you can do the main plot and it unlocks more map. If you wanted to speed through, you're just missing almost all of the jokes, and I feel sorry for you. As opposed to in Kingdom of Loathing, where you're trying to, the things that are the same every time, you loop through as fast as possible so you can get to the higher level content, which is new. Like it's not it's a different mindset.
I would argue that this game has pretty much as much content as your normal 40-hour RPG. It is just broken it into a way that is considerably more involved, or player chosen and bite-sized, and all of the stuff, and it's kind of what we're talking about now, but all of the stuff that fills up time in those other games is gone. And I have even another example for that, grinding. So this game has a full level up system like most do. You're getting stronger, you're earning experience, buying new spells or what have you. Most games would like kind of force you into consistent random encounters in order to level up. And this game does have random encounters to a degree. But the majority of it is there's these like combat areas, and you can walk up to them and choose to fight. If you fight, you'll fight something that's right around your level.
There's like a pit of snakes, and you walk up and you can press A to grab some snakes.
Yeah, grab some
and
snakes.
Fight those snakes.
Or
if you need snake venom, just go fight the snakes. They're there.
There's like a always going on brawl in one of the bars, and you can go in there and just like hop into the brawl, and it gives you a consistent flow that you'll never run out, and they're all over the place. And you can just keep doing it.
And it plays into the other side of the system, is that you can get through this game without throwing a punch. You don't have to fight. It is you never have to grind because there isn't a minimum level to be at to complete the game. Like the game really values all these systems prop each other up, and that's like one of the things that's most impressive to me about this is that so it does have this open world. It has this density, which you're talking about a little bit, Nate, where it's like there aren't fillers. You're not going to fight 20 goblins. You're going to fight one. You do like one encounter between places. You're not just saying keep fighting them. If you run away, there's not like, if you get the horse that allows you to run away, there's not really a penalty for it. If you die, there's not really a penalty for it. If you don't want to do that fight, you can usually avoid it and just get to the end. It respects the way that you want to play, and all of the time that you spend doing those things, even the fights themselves, like something that like, I don't like JRPGs. And one of the reasons I don't like them is that the repetitive content, like you fight a lot of fights that are more or less exactly the same. Like I do not like a grind. I don't want to sit down and just kind of tap A through a fight. And even good ones, like they minimize that. They don't get rid of it. Right. So like you take something like Bravely Default, you can make them faster, but you can't really avoid them. completely. Eventually you can turn them off, but then you're not high enough level for the thing, blah, blah, blah. It kind of falls apart. Here, the fights are so few and far between. When they show up, they actually are tactical. Like I usually have a new ability or it's a new monster by the time I'm doing them. And there are kind of like jokes within fights sometimes too, which is really brilliant. To actually try to entertain me through this thing that is kind of downtime. So there's not a point like that's most obvious in towns and dialogue and everything, that there's no line in this that they didn't try to make funny. So even when we talk about being dense, even down to that level, at the very least, there's a joke.
Yeah.
And then there's can be more, but at the very least, there's a joke.
The joke density is astonishing. I mean, this game has, like any sort of open world game, you have a massive inventory. That's actually something that I kind of thought was impressive about the game, was that it has an inventory system that I thought was actually pretty solid. And you have zillions of items. Every single item has something funny about it, no matter how mundane the item is. And every single location has a joke. Every single enemy encounter, like even the random encounters, have a little bit of flavor text to describe that I never saw repeat. Flavor text that describes the encounter, and every one of those has a joke. The joke density here, not every joke is going to land for you, but like there's so many jokes that at least enough of them are going to land that it's always going to be funny.
Yeah, and like not landing is usually, it's just like almost too silly. And it's not like, it's not even like it's stupid, like, oh, that was a bad joke. It's just like, oh my God, it's like, this is so silly that I didn't even laugh. I just like shrug a little bit at it. But I think their joke writing in this is pretty cool. They handled it in a really interesting way, which is they opened every single door you could possibly open for there to be a joke. Not only in the item and things like that, but they also, there's like an antagonist narrator that is talking about the actions that you're taking as a player as well. So like your player is funny, and then there's just like a voice that is constantly berating you for choices that you make, or like pointing out the insanity of the situation at the moment. And so you can have jokes from your character, you can have jokes from the items, you can have jokes from the bad guys, you can have jokes from the narrator, or I don't think that's the right word for it, but like the voice of God that is like insulting you for sticking your hand into like the 15th spittoon. It's everywhere.
There's even visual jokes. I mean, it's a pretty simple black and white illustration model, and yet there's one joke where you walk up to a tent and there's a little like Salvation Army Red Cross sign, little plus, and you click on it and it says, "This must be the math tent."
That's
like,
pretty good.
Yeah.
It didn't need to
every
be there.
interactive object had something like that. Like you've just reminded me of there was a burned out building that said, "This must be where they stored all the fire."
Yeah, it's like it makes me mad at other funny games, right? Like it made like this. The whole thing also made me mad. I mean, I brought this point up in the other podcast I recorded about it, but I think it's a good one, and it's a weird comparison, right? But one of the games I think this reminds me of is Planescape Torment, which is a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
But in Planescape Torment, not one NPC is wasted. Not one description is wasted. Everything you look at, everything you do, it's to a totally different effect, right? Like it is to make you feel a feeling that like is to touch your heart and stuff. This has that same kind of economy. Like you're not going to waste my time. Like every NPC, like this game, they're like, why not make him have a joke? In Torment, they're like, he's got to contribute to the theme. Like, and that philosophy of not wasting my time by having somebody say like, I heard the king lives in the castle, or like Dragon Quest nonsense, like where you just talk to a villager and they say nothing. Other things suffer in comparison, I guess.
And the economy is even better when you think about the fact that if you don't do a side quest, you're not penalized. Anything you do, because it's funny, because there's a lot of things to look at, even if there's not a giant payoff and you get the best item in the world at the end, you've had fun playing that quest. So it's not like a lot of ones that you have to grind through because you need to. There is a section of the game that is intentionally making fun of grinding and bureaucracy and fetch quests. But that turns it into the joke. It's like I'm doing all this painful stuff as part of the joke that we do this in games.
It's a setup, and then eventually there's a punchline. Yeah.
Right. It's not intrinsically built into the game.
That reminds me of one of the things that I think is also just one of the most successful parts of this game is that So when you're in the game, you have this big map, and that's how you choose what location you want to go to. You start at like a main town, and you can either wander, or as you're playing, you either happen across or through the results of your actions discover new locations. And they use new locations as a reward for a lot of things. And I think that's brilliant because the new location is not only furthers the game, but there's going to be like something funny or something fun there. And so it might not be an item, but it might just be that you see a cemetery on the map and you're like, oh, that's more fun than an item. Finding that cemetery is way more fun than getting like 1,000 meat, because who knows what's going to be at that cemetery. It's probably going to be funny, and I might find other stuff. And they chain these locations together where that's the best reward, which is the most fun part of any game. And they handle it perfectly.
That's why my favorite item was the disposable binoculars, where you find a high up location, you can use these binoculars, discover a location, and then the joke is you just throw the binoculars away.
Yeah. Any binoculars are disposable if you throw them out.
Yeah. Most games you don't get like finding the next place is just the progression. You're like, okay, I'm here, but I have to be here because this is where I'm going now. But this game is like, hey, good job, you found this place, and that is rewarding enough. And it makes it so much fun.
And there's a go there now button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they put on the map real big new, because if you play this game a lot, you end up with just it's a really condensed amount of locations to go to. And so they make it like it'd be really easy to forget. Like, what was that one I discovered from that map I found in the bottom of that bunker? Oh yeah, I go to the map and it's like real big.
So we've talked a little bit about the sort of generalities and systems of the game. I wanted to talk a little bit about like specifically how you guys played it. So first thing, when you start the game, the character creation system was cute and I thought very funny. But they have 3 classes: Cow Puncher, Snake Oiler, and Bean Slinger. So Laura, what did you play as?
I played as Snake Oiler because in Kingdom of Loathing, I always have the most fun with the Moxie class, it's just the Charmer. So it's a class that plays a lot of potions and buffs. And in this game, it's a Poisoner. Like your item, I'd like to hear what the items, but you get your grandmother's briefcase of snakes is your starting item. And you can milk those snakes and get healing potions or venom out of it. And that's who you're going to play as.
That's really good. I played as a Cow Puncher, which is the basic sort of, I guess, melee or like warrior class in this game. Most of your most everything involves hitting things with swords or sticks or something. And it sort of played into I think the funniest and yet also sort of most evocative element of the setting is this idea that this is a sort of a post-apocalyptic Old West where this is after the day the cows came home, which is apparently at some point in the relatively recent past, a portal to hell opened and evil cows spilled out of it. And now cows are the enemy across all of the West. And so the Cow Puncher class, mostly is about hitting cows with sticks and such. It was pretty fun to play as.
Yeah, I went with, to round it out, the Bean Slinger. If you put me in an RPG and let me be a wizard, I'm going to be a wizard. So
man's got to have rules.
Oh yeah, no, that's a guiding principle for me. But if you start this thinking they're a normal wizard, they are absolutely not, because all the magic in this game is food based, and the bean, especially bean based. Like apparently all magic flows from legumes. So it's an extremely like mechanically similar to like most kind of wizard kind of classes you'd have played in other games. You're leveling up and gathering spells by reading them out of books. But the theming on all of it is just tremendous.
You mentioned the books. One of my favorite things about this game is you generally learn new skills by finding books, reading the books, and then the game always has some way to tell you that the book has evaporated or disappeared immediately after you read it. And almost all, I mean, obviously everything in this game is an opportunity for a joke, but all of those are really funny to me. I remember one of them was I learned a skill that was something like ever vigilant. And then, of course, after I learned about this from the book, I shot the book to death because now I don't trust books or anything else.
I had one that I remembered from that as well. I really liked, there was a lock picking skill, and I at the end of reading it, you donate it to an orphanage, and then you say, so that they can free themselves. Go orphans!
One of the things that's interesting in thinking about all the classes too is that so those classes all kind of map on in like an archetypical way to like D&D classes, but mechanically in the game, they kind of don't, in a way that I think is really important. So like if you look at like something like a Cowpuncher, if you're playing a traditional Western RPG, the fighter class ends up being the most straightforward. You don't get a lot of things to do. And that's not true in this game. Like the Cowpuncher is the one that can learn leatherworking, and the Cowpuncher is the one, like everyone gets, a couple of buffs, and then you get like an AoE kind of attack. Like the classes are actually kind of similar. There's different flavors to them, but they, part of the philosophy felt to me to be like, everybody needs cool stuff to do, so like it doesn't have that D&D, like I'm a thief. So if there's no, shadows, like you play the Moxie class, if you play the Snake Oiler, it's not like you're useless outside of social situations. And if you play the Cowpuncher, it's not like your only option is to punch things. Like you get a bunch of different other little skills, and I think that's really smart. Everyone gets something cool to do.
And I also like that you can kind of complement that with your partner. I only played with the one partner, Doc Alice. Doc Alice is her whole family was killed by a necromancer, and so she hates skeletons and hates necromancers. She has a cool power that can take out a skeleton in one hit with a bone saw, and she's got a nice heal ability. But she was fun because she added a little bit of flavor to every encounter that involved the undead, which is a surprising number in this game. Did anybody play with any of the other?
Yeah, I played with Susie, the just sort of rancher's daughter, I guess, was her flavor. Or
rancher's daughter, orphan.
Orphan, yeah. So her family was killed by cows. So she levels up by killing cows and makes notches in her gun, and so she's a really fun one as well. She's really, anytime you get towards any sort of cow related, event or situation, she always has something humorous to say.
Yeah, she's also, that's who I had too, and she's pretty high damage. She has like a rifle, combat. And then she can either build a wall in front of you to protect, or she can use her lasso to make a thing skip a turn. I think I probably used those last two once or twice, and I just used her for really high damage the vast majority of the time. I also played a beanslinger, and between my beanslinger and her, we were able to just quickly kill most things. Like, I think
I got walls covered. I've got a bean wall,
Yeah, right. I think they do that with combat. Like, I think they made it fun, quick, and accessible. Like, I never felt like it was super tactical. Like, there's certainly more tactical games. I did die some, but it was most often like I felt like I got into a fight that was like well ahead of myself. Not necessarily like I like got outplayed by the AI. I could just be saying that though, and don't want to admit that I got outplayed by the AI. But I think it served its purpose really well. Is that's not what this game is about. Like, you could get really into it, and I got really into the food and booze and stuff to like buff my character. But the combat, like Gary's saying, you don't even have to do that. So it can't be the most important part of the game, and that's what most like RPG style games. It's all about like min-maxing your characters and making sure that you can combat the best. And I thought, obviously that's not the focus of this game. So they made it very polished. They made it very simple to understand and not too complicated.
Yeah, I think they made the combat as close to optional as they could without making you just have like a complete opt-out on it.
Yeah.
I actually found myself really enjoying the combat in certain parts of the game. When I first came into the game, I kind of intended to engage with it more on a sort of, you can approach this game more or less like an adventure game and not really engage with the combat mechanics early on. For example, it defaults to automatically spending XP for you, which means that you can pretty well ignore a lot of the stats if you want. And a lot, at least of the early combat, felt almost on automatic. But then I reached a point in the sort of the mid game where I needed to engage with the combat a little bit more, and so I turned off that automatic XP thing and started exploring the mechanics. And as somebody like I am a JRPG liker, not a huge player of them because I can maybe do one a year at most, given the way that life works. But I actually really liked it. It's funny because I had an interesting contrast. I'm currently playing Radiant Historia, or the remake of it, on the 3DS. And this and that have a lot in common in terms of their combat system. They're both this sort of grid-based thing where your party is lined up not on a grid, but the enemies are on a grid. And so the placement of your attacks and so on kind of matters in that way. And part of it involves like less so in this, but a little bit. Not just managing where you're attacking, but also maybe managing the locations of your enemies a little bit, either pushing them around or attacking in certain positions to get damage on multiples of them at a time, that kind of thing. I thought the RPG combat in this was like way better than I was expecting. Like there, for example, when you get to that place, that fort where those dudes are playing
the tabletop game.
Yeah, that's the highlight.
Yeah.
The puzzle version of it is, it made me like, I love that so much, and it made me want a little bit more of that in the regular combat.
Yeah.
Like, so just to explain it, like there's a section of the game where there is a series of puzzles. They present to you with combat encounters in the game's engine, and you have a limited number of moves to win, the combat, because the combat is largely deterministic in this. So, and that's really, really cool. And I liked that. And I felt like that was the platonic ideal of what the combat in this game could be, was this puzzle. And as such, like, I find it pretty painless. They make the loading screens quick. Combat encounters that are not meant to be climactic do go by very fast.
Dying never sets you back at all.
Dying
like
never sets you back.
You literally just get...
You actually get better. You get angry when you wake up. You lose your buffs, but if you're not buffed, you actually get stronger. So you will be more likely to succeed. How good is that, right?
Yeah.
But like, that is such a good philosophy. But the like by hour like 7, I think I spent like 7 to 10 hours on this game, or 8 to 10 hours. By hour 7, like, the combat had run out of new things to show me a little bit. So like, it wasn't bad. I just was like, get me to the next good bit of writing. And like, there were little bits of writing, there were little bits of flavor in it. It didn't maintain. And that's one of the big differences when I say that I don't like JRPGs. Part of the reason why, and there are plenty of exceptions, but part of the reason why they frustrate me is because it's that stretched over 40 hours as opposed to 7.
And I was running out of patience with the combat as well. So I first thought I would speed it up. It ended up actually making it less fulfilling, because a 1-minute encounter that is completely sped up and automated feels less necessary than a 2-minute one where you actually are amused by the animation. So that didn't work for me. But what did is I started challenging myself to use the vast array of combat items I had stocked up, because by that point I just was loaded, especially as a snake oiler who's like a potion-based person. I wasn't using any of it. Can I get through this without using my action points? Can I, just trying to liven up for myself. I think it's richer than the way I played. I played Max Men style. It got old fast. Had I been dealing with a little bit more of the richer stuff, I think it would have held me longer. And that's been true about Kingdom of Loathing, where the combat's the same forever. But if you want to decapitate someone with a can lid, like, that is a much more fun way to go. There's better jokes.
I had the same experience with the speed. I almost immediately set it to 200%. And then about mid-game, I set it to 300%. And it turns off the game sounds even, because I'm assuming it's going too fast for it to be able to like render the sound. And it became less fun, and so I turned it back to 200. And I do think 200 is probably the right speed for it for the majority of the game. I think I turned it down for some of the like you guys are saying, the sort of climactic battles, and I turned it down for the I think it's like Camp Treason or something like that. Whatever the camp is that we're talking about.
Camp,
yeah, the reenactment camp, because I wanted to be more involved in it. But I love that you had that option. I know that's not entirely new to JRPGs, but having the ability to speed everything up, I definitely appreciated.
It's also a gear in the corner of every combat. So if you want to tweak on a per combat basis, it's really easy. You don't have to go all the way back to the options screen.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time at those grinding things, so it wasn't even though I'm saying it wasn't the most exciting, I felt like I did combat a lot in this game. I know at Butterfield Ranch, where there's a unlimited amount of cows to fight, and I had Susie who gets upgraded by cows, and I really wanted to get some stats into like lockpicking and safe cracking and the sort of fun things. And actually, I think they might have even done that purposefully. At Butterfield Ranch is a place that has a relatively high lockpicking thing. I think it's like lockpicking 2, which at that point in the game, you're maybe 1 and it's a lot of experience to get to 2. And I really wanted to get that. So I spent a lot of time just grinding these cows so that I could get the experience to get lockpicking 2. And I just decided to do that for a lot of these fun character things and like outfoxing and dickering and things like that, and not even like the combat skills, but just put it into the like narrative skills. And I think it allowed me to have even more fun later in the game when there's a lot of ways around fights using those sorts of skills. And so I grinded using combat to be able to better avoid combat later in the game, and it made it a lot of fun.
I actually wanted to ask about Butterfield Ranch. I mean, it's clearly I knew you had a relationship with them, so I knew it was an inside joke there. But that, and I know there was another one I think named after coal. But
there's the coal mines, as they
were there any other like inside jokes that you know about that maybe I wouldn't have gotten?
There are plenty of like inside references to the other things. The two of them that are me and Cole are just those 2 locations, and then your companion, if you talk to them, they will say a duck feed reference at both those locations. So if you bring any of the companions, they have different things they say that are all different references to the shows on our network.
Did he tell you who's going to do that, or was that a surprise?
No, that was a surprise.
That's funny.
Sweet.
He was checking to make sure you actually played the game.
Yeah, so it was just like, it was great. I love the part with the sorceress.
You looked like you were having a lot of fun when you made that game.
Yeah. Real quick about the combat, and not that we have to get off it, but I want to also mention, this game's kind of opt-in, like it's there if you want it potential plays into this where, let's say, the combat wasn't like my favorite thing. Like I still like it for most of the game. I still liked it. Just near the end where I got a little bit done with it. Because it was very samey and kind of easy at that point. There's a hard mode too. So like if this is the kind of thing, if you look at this combat system with these kind of positional elements and this action point economy, and you're like, I need to dine on that. You can go into hard mode and play a version where Laura, like where you'd probably have to use all of those consumables, because I also ended with a backpack brimming with things I'd never touched, they're all funny. They had jokes to them. I liked getting them, but I didn't need them. There's a version of this game where you have to use all that stuff.
And you find that by finding and wearing the hard hat, which I think is a great in and of itself.
You can't take it off. It's a big disadvantage. You lose an equipment slot for doing it. So it's in addition to just being harder combat, like you have this evil hat and your characters will react to it. If you have the horse that allows you to run away, your horse won't run away because the hat gives the horse a dirty look. So it's too scared of your hat to run away. Like it's extremely cute.
What did the other horses do? I just picked the one that I thought would be the most fun, which was the dark horse, and I think that's the one that allowed you to run away because I had that option a lot more. What did the other horses allow you to do?
I got the ghost horse. I don't know what it did actually. I think I could run away as well.
I also got the ghost horse, but I don't.
So the one of them lets you run away more. The ghost horse is the one I can't remember. The crazy horse allows you get more random encounters.
Oh, okay.
And then the normal horse is vanilla.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course I was going to take the demon steed.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to choose down a demon horse. Turn down a demon horse.
I chose ghost horse too. I think it just gave you more maybe wandering ghosts. I'm not sure.
So yeah, there's something
super
like
spooky
that.
the whole time and floated. So that's all.
I really liked that the default name for the horse on the fill-in screen was Epona. I was just every opportunity for a joke.
All right, what did everyone name their horse?
The ghost horse I called Glue, Gloo.
Classic.
I think I named my ghost horse Creepypasta.
Another great one. Laura?
I think I usually name them normal names. I think I named it Bobby.
Nice. You already remember?
No, I mean, probably like whenever I get a pet in a game, I usually name it Roars, like Roars the horse.
Yeah.
And so that's probably what I did, but it's been a while, so I don't remember.
Roars.
Yeah.
So yes, Pale Horse gives you random undead and Next Mex books encounters. This is probably why it was so easy for me to accumulate all the Next Mex books, because I had a Ghost Horse.
Okay. So we're about to start running into spoiler territory. After the spoiler break, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the key side quests in the game, things that we thought were particularly cool or sort of late game content that we don't want to talk about for fear of spoiling it for folks who haven't played the game. So before we get to the spoiler break, each week we have been doing a segment called What's Making You Happy This Week? And you probably won't be surprised by what that segment is all about. So first, Laura, what's making you happy this week?
Well, I tried to watch a Netflix original South Korean variety show called Busted, where a bunch of celebs kind of pretended to be mystery solvers and solve a murder mystery. And they set up for the first 10 minutes delightful, and then they started solving it, and I hated it. So I went back to my old flame, The Genius, a different South Korean variety show. The Genius is, the first season's all on Netflix, and it is, what if you took social games, party games like The Resistance or Dominion or even rock, paper, scissors, and stretched them out for an entire day and put an hour break between each of them and televised it. A couple of things make this even better. One, for some reason, the people making it have access to the entire Western catalog. So like they're playing Moby, they're playing Ocean's 11 music. So it sounds so much cooler than any show could be in America. This is also probably why it's on YouTube and not, somewhere a little more legit. The second thing is they do a ton of editing. So as the game is playing, people are encouraged to cheat and lie to each other and really go out of the way to make these games work. So they kind of choose which player's perspective you're following. You'll go through the whole game in one version, and then they'll turn over a card, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's a 7. And then they rewind the clock and re-edit and show you everybody who lied, all the backdoor dealings. It's super fun. It's a game that's smarter than you, but you are so along for the ride. They also do great infographics explaining all of the games. They're ones that normally I play a reality show, in my head while I'm watching. This is how I would win. This is the strategy. I've never had a game where every strategy I've chosen is picked by a player and doesn't work. So you're like, oh man, there's all these it's way more interesting than it's just more complex. And
you said this is all on YouTube?
Dense. It's all on YouTube.
Okay.
People who
we'll
like
have a link to it in the
games
show notes. Then
will
it sounds
really
like kind of a blast.
It is super fun. Again, it's playing all this like heist music that's got a full score by a South Korean techno band, and apparently it's also got the South Korean Justin Bieber on it. So everyone in the first season is like, "Oh, he can't possibly lie. He's too popular." It's great. Yeah,
awesome.
Highly
Sounds
recommend.
Tremendous. Nate, what is making you happy this week?
Yeah, I've got 2 things, but I'll keep it brief. One, Lola, my daughter, turns 1 tomorrow, so
Aww.
That is pretty wild. It's pretty crazy. So we had our birthday party yesterday. It's still hard to wrap my mind around that fact, but it's exciting. But also today was St. Louis Pride, and my company is very involved in that. And
is St. Louis Pride similar to Gay Pride? Is that
good one? Okay, it was the Pride Festival in St. Louis.
It's less well known.
Seems like a conflict on the dates, actually.
The Portland St. Louis Pride Parade was actually really weird. No one showed up.
You have
not
the
very
right
many people
pizza.
here have St. Louis Pride.
Yeah.
Kinda strange.
Yeah, it did not go over very well. No,
St. Louis History Month is a sham.
So we had a float in it, and I got to, this is the second year I've walked in the parade, and brought Lola with us this time, and it was just so much fun, and it's just a very inspiring, event to be a part of, and it was a ton of fun, and I'm still coming down from that, during this recording. So if you've never been to it, obviously I highly recommend. And if you have a chance to be in it, I also highly recommend that.
Well, that is so nice, and it also makes my thing that's making me happy this week sound really petty. I like Mario Tennis. It's a good game, guys. It came out on the Switch. You've probably, if you listened to our episode on Golf Story, then you probably already heard me talk about my history with the Mario sports series, and I like the tennis ones maybe even more than the golf ones. And Mario Tennis Aces, not everything about it is like my perfect platonic ideal of a Mario Tennis, but it is a good game so far. I'm liking it a lot. So if you have a Switch and you've ever enjoyed a Mario sports game or a tennis game, it's probably, I give it a thumbs up. Check it out. And it's making me happy.
It's my first Mario sports game, and I'm actually really enjoying it.
Man. I never made you play the Mario Tennis on the GBA. I never
browbeat thank you.
Okay. Well, Shane, what's making you happy this week?
Also a game. I've been playing this board game that I've got to recommend to anybody who's listening. It's called Hive. It's been out for a long time, so I'm definitely not on that new shit. But if you've never seen Hive, I basically describe it as bug chess. It's a wonderful game because you can play it anywhere. It comes in this little travel bag. The pieces are these big honkin' plastic chunks. And instead of there's no board whatsoever, it's just a tile laying game where the goal is to sort of surround and I suppose smother your enemy's queen.
The goal is to embarrass and humiliate and destroy your brother completely, which is what's happened mostly this weekend.
Which is great. It really is. If you are into kind of strategic board games, it's an incredible 2-player board game. It only plays as 2-player. It is a wonderful travel game because you need no board and you can pour an entire glass of beer over it without damaging it. It's really a fun one. And thanks for letting me kick your ass at it a few times.
That's a valuable and rare element to a board game. If you can spill something
parents,
all over
Nate,
it.
The pieces are large enough that a baby cannot swallow them.
Hey,
So
there you go.
Yet another thing to recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Gary, what is making you happy this week?
Yeah. I'm watching my friend's cats, Will Hughes, who does the Everything to Guppy podcast with me. And I can't work over there, really. I've tried. So I've been watching a lot of Netflix, which I don't usually do. And I caught up and I watched the most recent comedy special from one of my favorite comedians, John Mulaney. He did a comedy special called Kid Gorgeous. Not Kid Georgish, which is a different kid. But Kid Gorgeous. And it's delightful. It's extremely funny. That man is a comedy genius. And now that he's getting old, his material is getting very relatable. Which I like. So
he is really great, but I haven't caught that one yet. That's one to add to my queue.
Have you watched Hello from Broadway?
I watched that the first night I was there, and I love those two people so much, and I missed them. They toured with that, and I was in Chicago, but not on the right night when my friends were going, so I didn't get to. I'm really glad they brought that to Netflix because there is something about the way they inhabit those characters that is like a laser guided missile to my funny bone. Like,
they have such specific jokes. They had a joke about Eugene Ionesco's The Chairs, and I started laughing for 5 minutes, and no one in the room with me laughed at all.
It's kind of like
tears.
This game where you're like, if someone told me like, oh yeah, they play like kind of like old Broadway guys, and they're in their apartment, and they're making old people jokes. You're like, that doesn't sound very funny.
More than some other parts.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you're playing a game where you're fighting cows and skeletons. Like, yeah, it's way better than just that single line.
Awesome. Well, we're just before we roll into our spoiler break. Here's the admin. I am Reagan Kelly, and you can find me on the internet at Reagan K on Twitter, or you can find our show on Twitter at _shortgame, or at www.theshortgame.net, where you'll also find all of our back catalog of episodes, over 150 at this point, and also all of our searchable show notes, which makes it easy to find games that you might be interested in. If you are interested in a short game, odds are we may have already covered it. Go to a search. There's also a contact form. You can write us and let us know what short, interesting games are respecting your time this week. I guess if that's a construction that I can Never mind. Let us know what you're playing. We always want to hear it. Most of the games that we play on this show are in response to someone suggesting them to us either over Twitter or on our contact form. So
we can't be bothered.
We really can't be bothered to look around for things ourselves. So please let us know what you're playing and what we should be playing. Nate, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at NateSTL. And also, I just want to give a quick shout out to lazy_sailor, who left us a very, very nice review on iTunes. So thank you for doing that. We certainly always appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lazy Sailor.
Yeah, we support the sailors.
Yes. Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Laura J. Nash.
Shane, where can people find you?
Don't at me at 8-Bit Shane.
Yes. And Gary, of course, people can find you in all sorts of places, but where specifically should they look for you?
If it's on Twitter, you should find me at Gary Buh, GaryBuh. And then I podcast over at duckfeed.tv. I want to quickly mention specifically, our flagship show, Watch Out for Fireballs, is approaching episode 200. We record that tomorrow. So that's a big milestone.
Easily my favorite gaming podcast on the internet. If you're listening to this show and not already listening to that, first of all, how did you find us? And what are you doing on the internet? Like, what? But go listen to Watch Out for Fireballs. It's such a fantastic show.
I'm very, very excited. We're talking about The Sims 3, which is such a
nice.
phenomenal and important game that, like, when people talk about the most important games of all time, I feel like they never talk about The Sims, and that's a mistake. So shout out to that. And then we also, the newest show on the network is a show called Heartbeat City, which is a love relationship advice show that comes out every 2 weeks. And we're looking for your calls. So if that's something that's interesting to you, you can go to heartbeatcity.city. Heartbeat.city is too expensive. And you can write in, you can either call in at 1-502-69-HBEAT, or you can write in at gary@duckfeed.tv.
Yeah, I caught the first episode of that, and I haven't caught the second one yet, but it's a great show. If you like the advice format, they have interesting things to say and are great, funny people, and check it out.
It's short.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to be funny in that one. We're trying something different, and we'll see if it works at all. It is there are no jokes in it. I think there are a couple of things that happen that are funny on accident, but like, we ain't trying.
So great shows to check out. Everything over at duckfeed.tv. And of course, here it is, your spoiler break. So obviously we talked about all of the optional content in this game, and I wanted to save after the spoiler break a little bit of time to talk about some of the really awesome side quests that this game has. Most of them were pretty surprising, and so I didn't want to talk about anything there before we hit the spoiler break. But anybody have any particular side quests that you really liked or that you completed or anything like that?
I really went hard for the necromancy stuff. Forbidden knowledge is like catnip to me, and
we play the same kind of characters in games. Because earlier you made that wizard thing, and I was like, oh, like, yeah, if we ever play D&D, like,
we have the one time we played D&D together. I knew that you and I would have a good time around a table.
Yeah, I mean, if we were on the same side, we have to fight who gets to be the forbidden knowledge king.
I am Batman, and I am also Batman.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I didn't actually manage to make it to the necromancer himself, so I want to know.
Oh,
I mean, I'm gonna go back and play it, but so do I want spoilers on that? This is after the spoiler break, so I have to.
I feel like it's probably.
I need to know what happens.
Yeah.
Did anybody...
Well, so I did. Did anyone else?
I did as well.
Yeah, I did that one.
You guys might have done it better than me, because there's getting to the necromancer tower, and then I only looked it up after. But there's like there's like a maximum way to get to the top of the to the tower. So did any of you guys successfully become the champion necromancer or whatever?
Sadly, no. And I really, really want to go. Fortunately, we didn't talk about it, but this game really makes it easy to go back, even after you've completed sort of the main quest or main story. It's completely easy to just pop back into the rest of the game and continue. And I fully intend to do that at the very least for the necromancy stuff, because I heard that if you have Doc Alice in your party, or as your partner, that the necromancer stuff, becoming the necromancer, is particularly great. Did anybody take Doc Alice to be a necromancer, or to go be as your partner and go be a necromancer?
No, I was on Sally, so I think that
I know what happens, but I
know what happens. I'm spoiled on it. If
I'm also spoiled on it. I don't know. It's fine.
But we should talk about a little bit
But
what,
nobody
what
say
it is. Yeah, I mean,
But nobody say.
so it's really there's a lot of these quests in this game that are like solely branching off of each other, and you can either like write it to the end or you can just take like little minor benefits as you go along. And I think the Necromancer one is a really cool one. There's also the El Vibrato thing where you don't even have to get to the end of it
Is
to not
the El
finish.
Vibrato like? Is that worth it? Like, I mean, I'm sure everything in this game has some kind of funny bit, but like,
Yeah,
anytime
that's a
I see
hard quest, I spent a long time like taking notes on their numbering system, and like at the end of it, it was like, "Congratulations, you know El Vibrato numbers," and I'm like, "Okay, what's next?"
I got some good food. The El Vibrato food cube, as well as
It's quite good.
they have a helmet that they have a full armor kit.
Yeah.
But I only ended up getting like the helmet, I think, and it was pretty good. I did not complete it.
anytime I see like a you have to decode this language thing in a game, I'm like, I am never doing that. Not because I don't want to, but probably because I can't. Like, I'm not Laura.
That is, it's opposed to me where I'm like, oh, look, it's a language.
Yeah.
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 my
These
thing.
guys, like, and I say this with all affection because they're some of my favorite people on earth, is that they're huge puzzle wanks. And Riff specifically loves, was it La Maluna? Has that language
Mulan.
puzzle, and it has that language puzzle in it, and like things like that, like Fez, like that's his thing in a lot of ways. So I knew he was going to do something like that. And I'm much closer to you, Reagan, where like I just know I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just not a subject of my interest. You know, so when I first saw that, and I saw my game brain realize like what this was going to entail, like getting these punch cards, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, I know what this is. Like, I know these dudes.
Ain't happening.
Yeah, this is definitely not a like Fez style where you have to figure it out with a piece of paper. This is you stick a punch card in the computer and it'll teach you 3 words.
It was just doing that a lot, you know, which I didn't mind. And the thing that's great about though, and this plays with all the side quests, so it applies to the Necromancer thing too, is that like super optional. Like the things you get, like it is kind of cool at the end, but I was just like, I didn't really want to do this, and it's fine for next time or not at all, and I don't feel bad about missing it.
Some of the puzzles are really fun and inspired. I specifically remember having a really fun time with the old millinery, where you go in and have to figure out which of the hat stands like an enemy is hiding behind.
That was fun.
Yeah. And, you know, it's just progressively more and more of like a one of these things is not like the other kind of game. But, you know, it did it. And I can't recall some of the later solutions, but there was like 4 or 5 iterations of it. And by the end of it, it was a really fun, really clever puzzle.
That also was the setting of one of my favorite like visual gags in the game, which was that you go into a room where obviously they've been manufacturing hats, and one of the crates is dents.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all the different parts of the hat. There's rims, there's like bridge, and then there's dents.
Dent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it says that the crate is brimming with brims.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Oh god.
There's also a similar thing too with the pickle, the ghost pickle factory, where it's like 3 rooms and it's all micro little puzzles that you have to figure out. And those are like little number puzzles that were quick but just challenging enough to feel satisfying when you complete it. There was another small series that of like side quests that I really enjoyed, where there was the I forget the name of the ranch, but it was a ranch that had been totally destroyed. But there's a vault door, like a big metal vault door, just right in the middle of it, and you can't open it.
I got stuck on that. I know just what you're talking about. How did you learn to aim the cannon?
So you have to go into the bunkhouse, and in the bunkhouse there's locked bunkers or trunks or whatever. You know, you have like at the foot of your bed. There's locked those, and you have to. Yeah, you have to have lockpicking 2, I think, at least, to open and you open them up and you get different field guides, except for one of them, it takes you on the small side quest. You have to go all the way back to like Dirtwater, which actually reminds me, I want to talk about Dirtwater real quick, but you had to go all the way back to Dirtwater, and you basically get all these different field manuals for how you aim it. And then when you finally aim it, and you have to go back to the ranch to place the flare so it knows where to shoot. And when you do, it opens up the thing and you get a ton of those books. So you get a bunch of new skills, or like if you didn't have like safe cracking or something like that, they're down there, and it's very advanced book. So it was a pretty good reward for not a lot of work, but just enough work to feel really satisfying. That was one of my favorite ones. It was one that I did not had the ability, I ran out of needles, and I just kept it in the back of my mind the entire time. Like, once I get a needle, that's where I'm going, because I want to pick that lock, because I'm pretty sure it'll let me shoot that cannon. And then it did, and I was like, nice.
If I could talk about one of my favorite things in the game, and this is so just generally when we didn't really talk about the structure of the character mechanics itself too much, but in addition to all your stats and things, you have all these different kind of tags, sort of, so you get the goblin tongue tag. Now you can understand the perks. That's what they're called. And there's a moment in one of the early areas where you have to choose between either you see some mining equipment, and you either ask your partner about it. It tells you don't know anything about it, and you have the option to either ask your partner about it or explain it to them. And if you decide to just explain it to them and talk out of your ass and go through a couple of prompts there, you get a perk called Minesplainer, which means that you just get XP anytime you deal with anything mining related, which is fairly frequently.
Well, it ties into one of the companions too. Like, we didn't talk about him, but the Crazy Pete or whatever his name is.
I didn't
Old
touch
Pete.
Crazy Pete.
He's the
Like,
mind-related one.
That's how he levels up. So, like, each companion having a bespoke way to level up is really clever.
That is.
And that's his. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, Minesplaining. There's a bunch of funny ones. Percussive maintenance, I think, which allows you to hit anything that's broken. And they also, the way they spread those out, I assume you have a lot of different chances where you can choose which ones you want. Like, you choose if you want like lockpicking or safe cracking or whatever at the beginning. By the end, you have pretty much all of them, which is really, really great. I also love they teach you about them really, really quickly. The perks that you can get them in strange ways. Like, I'm assuming you guys also ran into like 15 cactuses within the first 5 minutes of playing the game.
Absolutely.
And you get scab. It just says you're now scabbed or something like that, and it's plus 5 HP, and it's just you have that for the rest of the game. And they just build it right out of the gate. It's like you're gonna alter your character through the things that you do in the game.
And just by trying random shit, that really teaches you, like, even just touching everything that you can touch potentially has upsides. At the very least, you're going to get a joke, and maybe you'll get a perk.
Did anyone eat the hell cow food? So for context, you eat different things or drink different things or cook potions to power up and get these temporary buffs. And you get a lot of like cow meat, infernal milk, like tainted things they're not tainted because they're spoiled, they're tainted because they're evil. And whenever you try to eat them, the thing says, this is from a hell cow, from like the spawn of Satan. Are you sure you want to drink this? And I was so curious. Now that I'm done with the game, I think after I maybe do another side quest, I would love to know what happens, because I know the next Mex books will mess you up, but
it doesn't let you. I tried to drink and eat everything, and most of the time it would just say, no, maybe you shouldn't. So I don't know if there's my assumption is that there is some sort of perk otherwise that you have to get that allows you to eat and drink all of that. But I don't know.
I loved all the dark stuff too. I mean, yeah. I loved the hell cow stuff. The side quest that I have not completed, but I really want to, is all the clown stuff.
Oh, I finished those. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've gotten a fair amount into the clowns, and
that one's a little obscure too. How you actually unlock, like getting to go to the main show, and then you also have the option to totally destroy the clowns or the goblins if you go to Camp All Dead, where that like military is. Right. Is training. If you get a certain item, you can direct that army towards something.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You put toy skeletons on the battle map. Yeah. And that actually changes where the skeletons go in real life, which is a really cool, like,
yeah. I chose to destroy the clowns because I did not trust those clowns.
No.
Even though I ultimately had briefly allied myself with Barnaby Bob or something like that. But after you destroy the clowns, you get his boots, and the boots were pretty tight. So it all worked out for me.
You've got good boots.
I got good boots.
Nate, you said you wanted to say something about the about Dirtwater.
Oh, and I really wish this was before the spoiler break. One of my favorite things not one of my favorite things about the game, because there's so many great things, but something I really appreciated was that, like, one of the things you see a lot in RPGs is like, you can affect the world, and it never really feels like that. But what they do with Dirtwater actually kind of felt that way. There's all these.
It was very Suikoden 2.
There's a lot of empty lots, and through your actions, you may inspire or free someone, or otherwise allow them to return to Dirtwater and open up a shop. And it fills out those slots, as well as you may rescue members of a band who will fill up the auditorium that is playing there. And those shops are usually pretty worthwhile. So I loved just being out there exploring, rescuing someone, and then being able to go to their shop and get like upgrades, like the shoes place. There are some really good upgrades there. The hot dogs, the elegant hot dog, give you a lot of mysticism, so that was great for or mysticality, so that was great for my guy. I just really liked that growth of the home city throughout the entire game. So it kind of gave you a reason to go back there, even though it might be a long time since you had any quests that were worthwhile there.
So does anybody have any last thoughts on the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to nominate the Spittoon gags as probably the best video game joke.
I've been saying that for a year. Like, I want Riff to get a statue. Like, I was saying plaque for a long time, and now I think that in Videoland or whatever, there should just be a statue to Riff when you come in.
Yeah, with a golden spittoon. The
golden spittoon for that joke.
The best gear in the game is at the bottom of those dang.
I know, my guy was disgusting. The helmet, the gun were all things that I carried the entire game.
The one full of urine where like the nerds have been peeing in the
oh god,
the thing, like it's so good, and it plays into what we said earlier. But I didn't want to mention it but the thing Nate was talking about with the voice of the narrator, like that's the strongest narration work. Like the way that character comes into his own when you're doing that. And like, it's a funny joke that I've only talked about in serious breathless terms for like a year, where I've just talked about it. Like, just explaining like a class I took with which is, for people who don't know, who don't care about spoilers. Like there's a series of spittoons. You reach in them. The narrator's like, do you really want to do that? It's a spittoon. That's pretty gross. And then you keep doing it because you're a video game protagonist. Like, it's very clever. It's a fourth wall thing. Like, characters in video games are constantly rifling through trash, and it's disgusting.
Protagonizing.
Just going off protagonizing. And the narrator just gets more and more repulsed with you as you go. And then your voice gets more antagonistic. And you start just like, I'm going to actually bob for it. Like, I'm not even using my hand narrator. Like,
put my mouth all on it. No problem.
And this arms race.
The rim.
This arms race of who can be more disgusting, like, is so well realized and well written, just laugh out loud funny. Like, and it continues throughout the whole game. Like, it's a joke that every settlement you get a tiny little dose of this joke, and it escalates every time and gets funnier as you go until it like builds on itself until the end, where it's just this very glorious moment, like one of the most earned things in games.
And you get like perks from it. Your stench resistance goes up every time you do it. It's so fun.
And you get perks for not doing it because they're great game designers and they know that that's how you should reward people for doing things.
Oh, you do get it for not doing it?
Yeah, if you get through the whole game without doing, if you see all the spittoons without touching one of them, you get a perk as well. So
what kind of monster can resist those? I don't know.
And like the first one where it says it's like really gross, I can imagine. I think it's a weird way to check and see if you have the appropriate amount of buy-in and you're on the same level, I think, as the devs, right? Because like the first one where he's like, that's pretty gross. If you're thinking in conventional video game terms, somehow by that point, you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to get poisoned, or something bad is going to actually happen that I care about. And you don't know, like, we're just playing. It's like you and the developers, you and the writers behind this game are like having fun.
Yeah.
Even the things that actually are negative buffs, like your hair turning white because you dealt in demonology too much, it doesn't really hurt you that much because you've got 15,000 other buffs on you, and now you can drain the blood of your enemies. So who cares?
Yeah, it's not that tough of a game. Like
-3 Moxie when you're at like 45 already. It's not that big of a deal, and it was way funnier to read the next books, and it was way more satisfying. I totally agree.
In the first part of this, I compared it to Torment. Another game this reminds me a lot of is Alpha Protocol, which are both like very serious games. It's a weird comparison, but that game goes out of its way to reward you for whoever you want to play. So like if you go through and you're talking to people and you're kind of a jerk, like you get certain perks. And if you're really cold to somebody, you get like a perk, and it does that. And this game does that as well. Like no matter which way you want to appreciate it, the game will reward you for doing so, because again, you're just having fun. Like you're on the same wavelength with them, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the best way to play this game is being surprised. But if you really want to see more content and you're stuck on a gate, like Kingdom of Loathing, West of Loathing have incredible wikis. And the thing is, they just tell you what to do. And this is definitely the journey, not the outcome. So if it's going to tell you, go to this location and look behind the bush, you're still going to see a ton of jokes, a ton of other things that it's not going to show up in a wiki. So it's one of the few things that I'd say, if you've done everything you think you can and you're stuck, the wikis are dry. The game is not. So it's hard to spoil yourself.
That's a great point. I actually, even in the Pickle Factory, there's that puzzle. It's a pretty classic puzzle where you have to line up 3 different bars, thank you. Every time you pull a lever, 2 go up, the one you pulled goes down, you know? And you have to get them all 3 to line up. And I was like really tired when I was playing, but I was having such a good time. I ran into that one. I was just like, I spent like 5 minutes just like moving all the different levers, just like, I don't feel like solving this the way you're supposed to, but I want to keep playing. And I know that this game isn't about that. So I just looked it up real quick, and I was like, I almost never look up puzzle solutions because I love puzzle games. So I was like, I'm running into a point of friction on a game that does not want you to have any friction. So I'm just going to look it up, and I felt totally fine about it.
Big enough that it really doesn't hurt your experience whatsoever.
Yeah, I had so much fun playing this game, and even more chatting with you guys about it. Thank you so much, Gary, for coming on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I always love having a chance to chat with you about anything. So, anytime you have a short game that you want to talk about, feel free to knock on our virtual door.
And congratulations on episode 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Thanks.
so awesome.
Huge.
Thanks. Yeah. Almost 8 years.
Yeah.
So it's
God.
been gone. Yeah. Because it's bi-weekly. So it's almost 400 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm real excited about it. It's gonna be a real fun episode too. I'm glad that we did it. We had that rough June and now we're back, baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
And of course, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. See you again next week-ish.